My name is Birol Gupta, and I'm a staff attorney here at Texas Advocacy Project. I will pick up this section of the training and review best practices when working the legal line. In this part of the training, I will walk you through the key steps of a legal line call, from how to start the conversation to gathering necessary information, issue spotting, and sending resources. By the end, you will hopefully feel more confident in handling these calls and in helping survivors to get the help they need. Every legal line begins with an introduction and a few important questions to set the stage. When you answer the call, introduce yourself by saying something like, "Hello, my name is Birol, and I'm a pro bono attorney with Texas Advocacy Project. I'm calling for your scheduled legal line appointment today to provide you with free legal advice. Is this still a good time for you to talk?" If the caller says now is not a good time, let them know they can call our intake specialist to reschedule. However, if you happen to have time later in your clinic block for that day, and the client will be available at that time as well, feel free to reschedule them yourself for later in your time block. If it is a good time, you can move on to do a critical safety check. You can ask, "Before we begin, I want to make sure you're in a safe and private place to speak with me. Do you believe that you could be in danger at this time?" If the answer is yes, prioritize the client's safety by encouraging them to call 911 or discussing with them some immediate safety planning resources. If they are safe to continue, you can provide them with our disclosures. Let them know the purpose of this call is to provide free legal advice, and although you are not their personal attorney, you can provide this advice and it would be protected by attorney-client privilege. This confidentiality extends as long as there is not a third party present and as long as the call is not being recorded. Clients sometimes want to have a friend or a family member present with them during the call for support. This does not prevent you from going forward, but it is important to make clear to the client that attorney-client privilege is no longer in place. A final disclaimer that you are a mandatory reporter of child abuse and will have to go ahead and make a report if any allegations of abuse are detailed during the call that were not previously reported. Lastly, there are a couple of factors that would prevent you from providing legal advice. Clients are sometimes represented by attorneys and either are not able to get as much communication from their attorney as they would like, or they're unhappy with the services they've received thus far, and then they start looking for additional advice. It's important to ask this question early on in the call to prevent a conflict later. You can say, "There are a couple disclaimers I would like to address. First, I cannot offer specific advice if you're currently represented by an attorney. Can you confirm that you don't have legal representation at this time?" If they say yes, they are represented, you can explain that while you won't be able to offer specific legal advice, you can still give them general legal information without getting into the specific facts. You can also ask if they have any pending cases right now, or if they have anything filed in court. This helps to understand where they are in the legal process and if there are any upcoming deadlines that you need to be mindful of. The second disclaimer is that our services are only available to survivors of abuse. And although this abuse does not have to be physical in nature, and it does not have to be reported to the police, it does have to exist. You can ask, "Can you confirm that some form of abuse, like physical, sexual, emotional, or financial, was taking place in the relationship you're calling about today?" If you are able to go through all of these disclaimers and disqualifying factors without issue, you can go ahead and make a note that the client understands and consents to the confidential nature and the limited scope of services provided. And now you can proceed with gathering details. When gathering details, it's helpful to use a template like the one listed here. As previously mentioned in the legal server training, all of the categories may not be applicable, but if you do your best to structure questions around these fields, you can move the call along in a way that helps you understand the client's needs and will allow you to give advice accordingly in the time permitted. You can ask questions about what their relationship is with the other party, if they were married, what's the date of the marriage, when they separated, and if they're still currently living together. You can ask about whether they're concerned for their safety, what forms of abuse they've experienced, and then to tell you what happened that led them to the call today. Throughout the call, take clear and structured notes. Keeping good notes helps track the caller's concerns and possible legal remedies. Keep your notes factual and brief. We don't record unnecessary personal details, just what's relevant to the legal issue at hand. And to make it easier, we provide copy and paste note formats that align with different types of cases. Feel free to use those. Once you've gathered the necessary details, it's time to provide legal advice within the scope of the call. Let's talk about issue spotting. Clients often speak to intake about a certain legal issue, but after having a few minutes on your legal line call, you could see that they have another issue that is more pressing and should be addressed first. For example, a client may start by saying they want to get a divorce, but they may have greater safety concerns that warrant getting a protective order first. In that case, you can start with protective order advice and then move the call towards a divorce. If you're unsure of an answer to a question, it's perfectly fine to put the caller on hold while you research, or you can ask one of our staff attorneys for guidance. Many questions come up frequently in our legal line calls, so a staff member should be able to point you in the right direction. Once you are finished with giving legal advice, you may identify that a client has social work needs as well. This could include situations where a client is homeless or seeking shelter. They might lack basic needs like food, insurance benefits, or utilities. A client could have legal needs but is still in crisis and needs to process emotions. Or if they don't feel safe in their current situation, they could require advanced safety planning. A couple other reasons may be for lease termination, assistance with the crime victims compensation application, or wanting to get resources on therapy or support groups. Texas Advocacy Project has social workers that have a scheduling grid the same way as our attorneys do, and they can schedule appointments with these clients after their legal line calls. If you do have a client that could use our social work consults, please leave a detailed note in your legal server file, and one of our attorneys will take care of scheduling the appointment. While conducting these legal line calls, remember to lead with empathy. Validating statements such as, "I understand this process can be very frustrating," or "It's completely understandable that you would feel overwhelmed in a situation like this." These kinds of statements can help a client to feel comfortable and entrust in the advice and the support that you are offering. Try practicing active listening for challenging calls. You may need to gently redirect the client back to the main discussion to stay on track and to complete your tasks within the allotted time. Summarizing what you've heard can be helpful to ensure you've captured the key details correctly. If it's hard to fully understand the client's priorities and needs, don't hesitate to ask for clarification. You should also be prepared to de-escalate the situation if needed. Clients often experience re-traumatization when recounting their experiences with us, and they may feel fearful or uncomfortable discussing difficult topics. It's important to remain empathetic and non-judgmental while listening and providing advice. Focus on what can be done rather than what cannot, to empower the client and offer support. If a client is interested in receiving legal forms at the end of their call, you can either refer them to texaslawhelp.org, which offers a variety of useful forms that the clients can use to move forward pro se, or with their consent, you can send direct links to the petitions that the client is seeking. The most common petitions we send out are for original petitions for divorce and suit affecting parent-child relationships. They may also be seeking statements of inability to afford costs or applications for CVC or VINE. If a client is adamant that they need legal representation and they have not yet applied for legal aid, you can encourage them to try an organization in their area, like Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid or Legal Aid of Northwest Texas. End the call by reminding clients that they can call the TAP Legal Line at 1-800-374-4673 for subsequent appointments if they have new legal questions. And remember, the goal of a legal line call is not to solve every problem in one conversation. It's about empowering survivors with knowledge and giving them options so they can take the next steps. Your role in providing guidance and legal information is incredibly valuable, and we are truly thankful for your time.